Hey everybody, it's Wade McElwain here. I'm doing a little bit of a podcast, a little bit of a difference for me. Decided to do my own podcast here called Rant and Wade, and this, of course, is the first episode of it. Um, I guess why? Why now? And why are you wearing these rose-colored glasses? People in the podcast won't be able to see, but I have decided to do video as well, and I am wearing these rose-colored glasses. That has me sort of looking like Nathan from South Park, although without the glorious hair. The reason that I'm wearing rose-colored glasses is, look, man, I haven't talked about anything in the world, just because there's a lot of crap going on, and we're really in the end game now. We're in a pre-war society, and I'm wearing the rose-colored glasses to remind me to look at things in a positive nature. I was first struck by rose-colored glasses, not in a song, but when my fraternity, we went down to New Orleans in the 90s, and we were staying at our Pi Kappa Alpha fraternity. Across the road, there was a place called the Mushroom, and as you can imagine, they sold many accessories to be used with mushrooms, but also whippets and things like that. But a bunch of us there bought some glasses, and I was like, I'm going to get rose-colored glasses, man, because I was in my 20s. And that's what you want to do, to see life in the way that it was. But it was really nice to be able to see life that way. And so, yeah, I've decided to wear these because my inherent nature of that would be a dyspeptic, world's going to end, you're all going to die. And it's really not good fodder for conversation. So what I've decided to do is wear the rose-colored glasses to remind me to be positive about positive things, even though the gist of probably what I'm going to be talking about is really bad. It's just some negative life stuff. So the rose-colored glasses, you're not going to see it on the podcast, but you'll hopefully hear it in my voice as I sort of remind myself in a way to be positive, to find the positivity. So who the hell am I, and what the hell am I doing? Some of you might know me. I spent a lot of time I grew up on a farm in Canada. I went to uni, then just dropped out of uni to become a comedian, which I won a few awards. I hosted some television shows in Canada. I moved here with an ex to the UK in 2007, had a kid. And then, so I used to do a lot of stand-up, but, as a white male immigrant, not a growing audience for that. So, I also decided I was going through some sort of changes in my own life and decided, I'm going to take a little break from everything. Partially, my ex being in the same business, but also I was a bit of an edgy 90s comic, right? And I think a lot of those jokes, as we joked a lot, people didn't really take it as jokes after a while. They didn't like the jokes. So I decided to take a little listening break. Comedy was not, there was a whole, that sort of, we hit that Me Too sort of area. And, I decided, oh, man, it's probably better just to listen, just to shut up and listen because, and granted, there was a lot of white males dominating comedy, but there wasn't a lot of, it was a chance to hear different voices. So I, being a father of a daughter, I was like, time to STFU and just sort of listen a bit, just sort of give a little bit more perspective. So as a result of which, I sort of dropped out of the limelight. Not that there really was that much of a lime nor a light, but decided just to sort of focus on things and working and learning different tasks, tools, and things to hopefully make my life better. And I don't think it has, but I don't know. So now I'm back, and I guess it's because as a student of history, so I studied history, and in university, the thrust of my education, perhaps, was that the circular nature of humanity and how we basically always sort of come back to the inadequacies of our nature, which is selfishness, greed, and devising economic systems that are always going to enrich only a few and not help out a greater amount. Now, I'm kind of conservative to begin with. But this whole government system that we have, we are, as I said, we are in the end game. We are inching towards war, and everything that I started studying in university is really coming to fruition. I had predicted in university that this is back in the 90s, that the end of the world would come in 2025. End of the world as we know it. Not per se nuclear holocaust, but that there would be a massive upheaval. And we can see that in society. We can see, the cost of living crisis. Now people are wondering why there's no jobs. And it's, partially to do with the fact that the billionaires pulled out a lot of their money. And they're waiting. They're waiting to see what happens. They're not investing in things. And this system we've created is falling apart. People are more educated. People are angrier than I've ever seen. And that's why I'm reminding myself to wear the rose-colored glasses, because I don't know. I guess in a way, I don't know if my words are going to help, or I'm pretty sure that no one's going to listen to this. It has been sort of formulaic for sort of the past couple years of my life, is that, I think we're all finding that we're sort of a bit of an echo chamber. And everyone is sort of that cokehead of the party these days, that everyone wants to talk and no one wants to listen. So I've been trying to listen, but also at this time, I've sort of gotten to a point, it's like, all right, so I'm over 50 now, and I might as well throw some advice in, whether or not you choose to listen to it, or maybe it's just me wanting to hear my own voice, which I actually hate listening to and hate watching this. I will never watch or listen to this. Sorry. Hopefully you do. But I just find that now it's like, it's time to talk, and maybe people will listen, and maybe I'll have guests on. I don't know. But for now, I want to touch on sort of themes and sort of topics that I'm looking at. The big one I'm going to talk about today is loneliness. I'm going to talk about a few other things, because loneliness, it is growing. And it is also one of the reasons that we're seeing such anger, such frustration. And particularly, there's a lot of younger demographics that are not dealing with loneliness well. I think because of my generation, I grew up on a farm in Canada, and my brother and sister are both older than me, so I spent a lot of time on my own. So I know what loneliness is, but I've also, and I was a geek, I was a loser. I ate my lunch under the stairs. I was on Reach for the Top, which was like a quiz show. Didn't have a lot of friends, and sort of ostracized myself in high school because I grew up on a farm and I didn't know how to socialize properly. I didn't have the great socialization skills. It took me a while to be able to get that going. But I know what it's like to be lonely, and you talk about it. A third of people feel lonely most of the time. A quarter of people in the UK, 10% of people feel lonely on a daily basis. And I know what it's like. I mean, I'm a single man. I've been single for a decade. I've got my daughter. I live in London, England, which, if any of you live here, or if you know it, it is one of the most lonely cities in the world. It sucks your confidence out. It sucks your folksiness. I can go to Canada, come back recharged and feeling like folksy and wanting to talk to people and smile at strangers. And no, that gets shut down real quick. And I think that's sort of a deflection that people have. There's a reason that London is so unfriendly, because people are so untrustworthy. And they don't want to trust, I don't want to say that they're untrustworthy, but the people don't trust each other. And as a result of which, everyone has this defensive shield that we have put up. But loneliness is growing. And part of that is, there's lots of reasons we can look at why loneliness is growing. But the reason I want to talk about it in this first episode is the debilitating consequences that loneliness can have. As I said, growing up on a farm, I was able to make friends, and I do have some sort of friends. Sorry, all my friends listening. But it's more difficult to make friends these days, and it's more difficult to, I would say, probably for younger people, and I will touch on the big one, which is older people, but for younger people to socialize and actualize with other people because they're so into their phones. And, growing up in a pre-mobile phone era, we had to go out. When I was young, we'd get fake ID. You get a fake ID made, and you go to the bars when you were 17, just because you wanted to socialize and be an adult and talk to people, and it was fun. And, to be honest, I never really did talk to women. It was mostly me and my friends sitting around drinks going, she's cute, and just never having the confidence to be able to go and buttress, a group of females to say, hey, how are you? I like one of you, and the rest of you will hate me. But that was taking a chance, and there's not a lot of that taking chance anymore. You don't see it because people are so into their phone that the idea of actually reaching out and talking to someone physically is daunting. But I guess that risk reward that I don't think a lot of people feel that there's a reward to it. There's a lot of consequence, and I think the big one, because a lot of the society is always focused, oh, the young kids today, the young kids. And no offense, kiddos, and anyone under 30, you got your whole life ahead of you, and there's a lot of skills you can learn. I really get worried about the older generation, the over 60s that are lonely, because, when it comes to actualization and taking statistics and looking at all of this, there's no real data, and it's very difficult to find those old people. I've seen a lot of them around my neighborhood that see people, and you're like, and I've tried to talk to elderly people and sort of say, hey, how are you doing? Because there's a free house out of it in the end. I'm just kidding. But I knew someone who did that, actually. A woman in Toronto, her mother would befriend old people, particularly find out if they were lonely, and they get their house, which is diabolical, but also kind of clever. Anyway, the idea is that there are so many elderly people out there that are lonely, that we can't actually, I don't think there's someone taking statistics on this. You see them at the shops, but no one really seems to care about elderly people in so many different ways, because everyone just assumes they're fine. And there's always been a thrust to, how are the young people doing? We have to help the young people out. Look, I'm not just sort of being biased because I'm over 50, but I'm saying this is a big crisis that we have. There should never be elderly people in poverty. There should never be elderly people starving. And we're seeing more of that these days. That's a real failure of our society, when the elderly and your parents and your grandparents of society don't have anything. And I'm one of those. And I can see that in the have and have-nots, because money and this financial crisis that we have is really making loneliness even worse. Because think about it. So it's easy for me to say, hey, go out and have some drinks and have some fun and see some friends. But if you have no money, you can't go out. And it feels really bad to think, oh my God, buying a round could kill me. Because I couldn't eat. I can't pay my rent. And you have that with the cost of living, whereas I know in England, the price of pints has doubled, if not tripled, in the past 10 years. And it used to be able to, you could go and have a bit of banter, go and have a few pints and talk, but we're really not seeing that anymore. So that loneliness exacerbates. There's a lot of other things that loneliness has an effect on. I think perhaps, we can look at the causes of all of it. Technology is one of the big causes, because people can just bury their face on their phone, and we've gotten to this point where it's just easier to be digitally connected and disconnected from society. I think also part of that is that when you've got your digital confines and the safety net of your digitalis, there's no real need to risk your ego by asking someone out or talking to a stranger, which is bad, because you should always be doing things that scare you. I'll get into that in a bit, but you need to do things that scare you if you really want to push yourself in life, and if you want to have life push you, because otherwise you're just taking a lot of dicks to the chin. Unless you go out there, you need to be the one slapping. I don't understand how I've just gone to this penile thing. Happy glasses, back to happy glasses. Big cities are big causes of it as well. As I said, in London, it is so disconnected. And, one of the best things I did is I actually moved to an area, a different community in North London, where people do say hello. There are areas like that. And where you do make an effort, a concerted effort to say hi to people and be nice and add a bit of folksiness, there's a reward. So for me, the big city is tough, and it's very tough with that disconnect. Because a lot of times people are there, and you also have to remember, and people forget, that everyone's carrying their own bag of rocks. Everyone has that own sort of crap that they've got. And you don't know what anyone else is going through. So when you having a bad day or someone else just sets you off and irks you, you never know what they're going through, right? And that's the first thing you should think of when you get angry. I'm starting again on the causes of all of this loneliness. The socialness, I think, and the way society is. I've got a 15-year-old daughter, and I see that the way that the younger people engage, and the people, if I'm out at a pub and people in their 20s, there's no sort of moxie, there's no real sort of confidence, where people would just, in the 90s, everything was better in the 90s, and they truly were. I'm not gonna debate this. The 90s were the greatest generation, but there's no of this sort of societal going out and being a bit cheeky. I mean, in the 90s, yeah, people were like, oh, your humor was so shocking. Yeah, we were edgy because it was like the world had just opened up. It was like we were on a dial-up life, and suddenly this digital connection happened. And that's why people were very, I think, positive and very excited. We didn't care about race or sexuality. Just, you do you, man. You go. You do your stuff. And we don't have that as much anymore. The other big thing, of course, which I will get into another episode, I want to talk about media, because I do work in media. The media has made things just horrible. Look, people talk about the news and watching the news. I'm sure many of you know that there's really only 6 people or companies in the world that own all the news. Terrifying when you think about it. The news only comes from those sources, and you know, it's a very corporate news structure now. These news companies are about making profit, so there's no impetus for them to want to, you know, look at corporate malfeasance and or explore why the inherent system of wealth and distribution is flawed, fundamentally flawed, and needs to be ripped apart, because they don't want to, because they're shareholders, you know, they're satisfying their shareholders. And so this whole idea of this corporate disconnect has meant that, you know, this small businessness of people, there's a dichotomy between people who work in companies, people who are shareholders or make money, and other people who have to work 4 jobs while someone else is making enough money off their second investment job. This disparation is really a big issue, and it makes people really upset and makes you lonely, because if you see your friends are rich and you're not rich, or you're on social media and you're watching people falsely and blatantly, you know, claim that their lives are so rich when they're not, that makes you feel bad about yourself. The other thing also that happens is another cause of loneliness is education. And it sounds like, why would education make you lonely? But if you think about it, if you go and you know, in the 90s again, in the early 2000s, we were telling everyone, go to uni, go to uni, go to uni. You need a university degree, which was true, you know, in the 80s, probably. In the 90s, somewhat. Now, I don't know if I don't know if I'd encourage my daughter to go for a university degree these days, just because of just the rabble-rousing on campuses and this sort of politicalization. And, you know, I've always believed a university should be impartial, like a referee. You know, you go there to get some sort of education, and if you came in with a pre-existing bias, that would either be shaped or massaged to allow you to see life in a different way. So I think that part of that is a lot of people came out of university thinking, I'm going to be something, I'm going to get a job, and it hasn't happened. It hasn't. You know, I can personally speak that your 40s are not a great time to live, because that's when a cloak of invisibility hits you, and people just don't want to hear from you. People love to hear about people in their 20s and 30s, but you hit 40 and 50 and you are a forgotten soul. So you have a lot of that too, where people have, you know, gone to university, done a job, then suddenly their divorce happens and they don't have their kids anymore. Been there, done that. And you feel really lonely. You know, it was an interesting fact that I had read that you know, the loneliest age is a 48-year-old for men. And that was the highest rate of suicide. Is that men would just reach this level of loneliness in their 40s, and whether it was divorce or the fact that your life didn't actualize how you thought it was going to actualize. So depression sets in. And depression, obviously, a big cause of loneliness. So rose-colored glasses, Wados. What do we do? How do we stop loneliness? Well, sipping cold coffee doesn't help. Wow, that is a bit cold. But because if we don't fix these things, if we don't fix loneliness, and you don't address your own loneliness, there are some really severe consequences that come with it. And I've seen it. Obviously, suicide being a big one. And nobody needs to get to that dark place. Nobody needs to get to that place of feeling that your life force should not exist anymore. And sadly, it happens a lot, but we need to work on that and finding those positivities. Because one of the big causes of loneliness is a poor mental and physical health. I know personally when I've struggled with loneliness and I've struggled with, you know, just feeling like there was no one else out there. And obviously I've been single for 10 years. I know, right? Actually 12 years. Jesus. maybe 13. Wow. Lonely, Mr. Lonely. I'm adjusting. But when you have that and you're not able, to confide, to be a better person, because look, let's be honest, people are assholes. But if you find the right asshole that satisfies you, it's a good balance, says a guy going to a wedding today. But that's what you need is sort of that balance, is having someone. And if you don't have a partner, man, it can really mess with you unless you're really good with being single. I'm okay because I've got a daughter, but I'm sure there's a psychologist going, oh, you're not okay. You're definitely not okay. Because, as I said, these loneliness things, loneliness will bring, it makes it worse. It feels like you're in a dark hole. I remember someone telling me once, it's like, well, you'll know when you hit rock bottom. And I was like, mother trucker, I hit rock bottom 8 years ago. I've been living in rock bottom. You know what happens after rock bottom? You just sit there and you start to rot, and then you start to fall away into the silt. Taps of rose-colored glasses, thinking positive again. So, look, the other thing, the problem is with loneliness, one of the things it does cause is it causes people to be disenfranchised. When you start to see people on the internet with sort of radicalized thoughts or conspiracy kind of theories that you have, or I just call them alternative thoughts, that can really be dangerous. And when you start seeing the shooters and the school shooters and these kind of people of loneliness, it reinforces, loneliness can get reinforced and reinforces negative mental health if you don't have anyone to sort of question it. And that's a great thing about humanity and discussion, is you can be wrong, and it's okay to be wrong. It's okay to be wrong in an argument, as long as you learn, And so for a lot of people, I think that they sort of dovetail back into this loneliness factors, and this can really bring deep, dark thoughts. Because if you believe in certain almost radical views, because a lot of times people do develop radical views because of loneliness, because they feel that the world is against them. They feel that, you know what, chapter 33 of my autobiography, and then you got yours. And there is a lot of that. And there is a lot of making people want to pay. And you can see it. You can see it in society now. And that's not good. That comes and stems from loneliness, because when you don't value other people or you mitigate other people, it's really bad for you. You can see a lot in the anger that's rising up in a lot of young people. You can see it just in the road rage. And road rage is one of those things that has really developed and manifested itself in greater, almost in social media, because this idea of you being in a bubble and looking at everyone else going, oh, that person, that angry person. And then it just culminates because you don't know that person is also thinking the same thing about you, and you're both in bubbles. You're both having horrible days, and there's no communication. Again, big thing, communication. And this road rage, and you end up punching people. Interesting, in Belgium, they actually have these things where it's not policy, but some people actually carry around road rage dummies. So when you pull over and have an anger incident, they just punch the dummies, and that's a nice way. Rose-colored glasses again. So I guess, look, we know the results and the negative impact that loneliness can have on a society. And I've talked a lot from a male perspective, but I know in females, women, it's also a loneliness factor. I mean, you can only look at the mathematics of it and think there's more women than men in society, and therefore there's going to be more women alone if technically everyone were to pair up. And so you are finding this, and personally, I don't know how women deal with loneliness. I'm one of those Canadian farm boys that's old enough to go, well, man up, do it yourself and fix it. But I've also then, my personality allows me to go out and meet strangers. I'll just walk up and talk to a stranger. How you doing? Folksy. And that's part of one of the cures for me, and that's always one of the cures, is that when I'm lonely, and I quit drinking for a while because alcohol was not having a good effect on me. But what I quickly realized when I was in England was that the pub is a source of culture. So, I decided to go to the pub and have beer again. Not like I used to drink. I don't drink wine. I don't drink spirits. But just to go and have a beer over 2 hours and just sit with someone. And you just meet so many amazing people that made it, to me, I was like, I got to get out there more. I have to get out. I've got to put myself out there. And that is one of the big things I would say to a lot of people is put down your phone. If you're feeling lonely, put down your phone. It's not going to help. It's not going to help. Even the dating apps, the algorithms are skewed and skewered to screw you. And weirdly enough, there's like 8 guys that get all the dates, and then there's like 922, or I don't know how the maths work out there, but just getting nothing. Get out there, try something new. And it sounds so cliche, but it's nice to do things that are out of your comfort zone, whether it's going to like a macrame course or learning a new sport. Find something that you think would be an advantage for you to learn, a new skill set that would help you develop yourself. And that's important, to try to develop yourself. I mean, there's that Japanese philosophy of learning something new every day, even something small, just to learn one little thing and get a little better at it. Just perfecting one little angle of you. Getting out there and socializing and trying something new and scaring yourself is important. For me, doing comedy and starting comedy, that was good because it really helped me affect my socialization. And obviously, it's a hyperbolic sort of sense when you go from loner to being on stage. But that really helped me develop and allowed me to be able to doing crowd work. I still cannot remember people's names. I don't know if it's the copious amounts of marijuana I've smoked, or just I think that I just have this nature. I just forget names. I try to work on that. But being brave to me and doing things of bravery, of just trying something new. Yeah, go for it. You got to have that attitude. You've got to have that attitude that I'm getting out of this. This is a trap. I don't want to be lonely anymore. I am getting out of this self-made trap. I'm going to make new friends. I'm going to be a better me. The other thing, and this is an important thing I think to also look at too, is one of the things I've learned as I gotten older, because I have a bit of a temper sometimes and would be quick to knuckle down, if you will. What I've learned is the idea of killing with kindness. Now, it sounds cliche again, killing with kindness, but when you actually put it into force, it has some great payoffs. When my second relationship broke down, mother of my kid, bit of an angry woman with the vindictions, I would say, in certain things. And I knew, whether it was trying to steal my friends from me or just acts of diabolicalness where you're just like, why would you do that? Now, this obviously came from a place of her negativity and trying to isolate me, but I decided I would kill with kindness because obviously having a daughter, so I decided I would just say yes to everything, whatever. And yep, that's fine, because it was, it's for my daughter first. It doesn't really matter. I've got to put my ego aside. But then I started to apply the kill with kindness to many different principles. And whether it was from calling someone from the bills, so say you're calling someone your credit card, your council tax or whatever, or HMRC, what I learned is that if you kill with kindness, if you're just so, hey, how are you today? What's going on? And I record all my calls. That'll be another thing we'll talk about in another episode if I can find all the gumption. But the idea of killing with kindness is such an important thing in that it changes perspective and it makes you feel better about you, because what you're basically doing is identifying that person's having a bad day and you are just trying to be that different person. Imagine that's your job, and most of the people, 99.9% of the people who call, are just negative Nellies, just twisted sisters of horribleness. And you sort of think to yourself, all right, so I can either suck a duck and just be one of them, or I can be the difference. And you ask that person how their day is. You talk about something. I have gotten more out of killing with kindness with bills and with people in life. With Virgin Media I had here, and I was having a bad time and with them. And what I was able to do when I killed with kindness, I was able to talk to this person to the point that not only did they give me secrets about the company and told me, this is what happens, this is what you need to do, But I kept in touch with that person afterwards, added on LinkedIn, still keep in touch with them. And I've had that happen with other people as well, where if you're just outgoing. Now, I know in England, they're very much like, oh, like if they think confidence is seen as a weakness here, which is really horrible for them and for living here, because it does. Confidence can make you feel isolated in England. But when you actually do it and treat that person like they're a person having the worst day of their life. And if you talk to someone like that, how's your day? How's it going? You'd be surprised. And people will respond in kind. And it makes you feel good. Because then you're like, I'm going to kill with kindness more. Because it feels like a superpower. And what it also does is it breaks down part of these loneliness factors. It allows you to find a connection with someone. It allows you to have this sort of uniqueness. And don't do it flippant. You don't want to do this out of lip service. You want to do it actually as a real person, asking real questions and getting answers. And killing with kindness involves listening and not thinking about you, not thinking about what your next response is going to be. It's about listening to that person, trying to understand what they're going through, and then hopefully, man, try to make something out of it and just try to spin it into a positive sense. Because, that is part of, and I think part of loneliness comes from identifying, and a lot of people just don't have, who I am. What is me? Because you need to identify and figure out who you are to figure out what your path is. And this is like an old guy speaking to you, but you really need to figure out a bit of you, I've gone through this a lot, and you have ideas and perceptions about yourself in your 20s, 30s, and 40s, 50s, and then you actually hit those ages, and in your head, you still feel like an 18-year-old guy. I still feel that way. I still think, oh, I'm young, and then you see the mirror, you're like, oh, that's kind of disappointing. And so the idea is that you need to figure out, and there's an app called What 3 Words, devised by some military guys, professionals. You may have seen it, but using these What 3 Words, you can find anywhere in the world, there are 3 unique words that will position a 1 by 1 meter square. Something to that. And it got me thinking that, that redacting something to sort of the basics of those 3 words reminded me that that's an important thing for all of us to do. What are your 3 words? What are the 3 words that define you, that allow you to geoposition yourself in the world? Because, and I guarantee this, you will find uniqueness in those 3 words. So if I were to look at mine, for example, the first word would be Canadian. It is a cultural, it's a national marker for me. And obviously because, I've won awards in Canada, and I host Canada Day here in England, and I'm involved with the Canadian community. Canadian is a big thing for me. Even though I'm British, my Canadianness, uniqueness, helps define me. So my first would be Canadian. Now that's going to first identify me. My second word would be comedian. And a lot of people are like, well, you're not very fucking funny. That's right, kids. I'm not trying to force it. But comedy for me was that second thing, because the plan was law school, going into law and all of these kind of things. And then I was like, I want to try something scary. And I remember watching comedy and seeing comedy on TV, and comedy was big in the 90s, and I was like, I'm going to try that. And my father, and I told my parents, I'm moving to Toronto, I'm going to become a comedian, and I'm gay. And they're like, what? Stuck that in. I'm not. But jokes. And I gave myself a year. My dad's like, give yourself a year and see what happens. And a year to the day, I won Funniest New Comic in Canada from Yuck Yucks. I won a few more comedy awards. But what it did is the comedy, I wanted to be better at it, and it wanted to push it. And comedy's always been a constant in my life. I've always sort of been funny. And, whether it's acting now, during voice work, comedy has had that influence. So comedian would be my word 2. Canadian comedian. Now you're probably thinking, wow, lots of people could say that. Okay, but that's part of your 2 words, is narrowing things down. And what is it? My third word, I guess, would be quizmaster, which I can fit that into one word. But so I was a nerd, and one of the reasons when I was lonely, when I was in high school, I was good at Trivial Pursuit and Isaac Asimov's Super Quiz. And as a result, when I struggled to find friends, I found that there was this thing called Reach for the Top in my high school, which was a Canadian quiz team. And I really embraced that very quickly. They got me a scholarship to university doing these quizzes because we came in second in Canada in this national contest. And we used to go to like East Side Mario's in London, Ontario, Canada, and we'd play trivia. There's NTN trivia boxes, and it was $2.50 pizzas. I'm going through the prices here, $2 beers, but I was very good at quizzing and trivia, and I could whip everyone, and I'd win a lot. And so that led me into writing on trivia shows like Who Wants to Be a Millionaire. It led me to creating like Triviala Live. I created the first ever live multi-platform trivia show in the world. I still build trivia video games. And I have some trivia channels that I run. And I'm just a quiz mastering. I'll forget someone's name, but I can remember arcane odd facts. So Quizmaster, as someone who creates quizzes and someone who runs and hosts quizzes, it's my third word. Canadian comedian Quizmaster. Now, I would like to think that uniqueness about me, and obviously because I've won awards across those things, that helps define me. But that also helps define me in terms of not only not feeling lonely, but knowing that I have value and identity, and my identity is valued on that. And I would suggest to anyone who's listening or watching or really struggling with identity and confidence and loneliness is, let's work on your 3 words. And I want you to really dive deep into them because, for me it's a bit easy, but your 3 words, and usually your third word, I would say, is really that one that finesses who you are. And it might be something that you haven't done yet. Maybe it's scuba diver, maybe it's a dive master, maybe that's one of the things that you haven't done yet. But you know what? That's going to be my third word, because I think sometimes the third word needs to be that aspirational finisher, that little bow. As you use each word to define yourself. So I'm challenging yourself to sort of say to yourself, to ask yourselves, what are my 3 words? What are my 3 words of individualism and where I want to go with being me? I'm going to take a sip of coffee here as I keep looking at my clock and see how I'm talking. I am going to be putting, if you are watching this on the video, I will be putting some AI art because I'm big into AI art. That's a new thing I've embraced, is the AI artist. I went to animation school when I was like young. And I've always been big into animation, did my own animation book in my 20s. And so I've loved it. And so this whole new AI art, you'll see some of them. I don't know which ones I'm putting. In fact, the video, if you're watching the video, I'm editing this afterwards. So it's going to look, well, I'll be surprised. There'll be some titles and stuff like that. Oh, nice cold coffee. That's the one you're like, that's maybe not so good. AI is part of something else. Look, I'm trying to, each one of these episodes, I'm trying to touch on a bunch of topics, and loneliness being one, and futurism, because I think futurism, I don't know how much time, because I could just talk for an hour, and it's my first one. I didn't want to see how it goes. But futurism is all part of this AI, and it has been leading to loneliness, and a lot of people, we look at what AI is doing now. A lot of people, I use it quite a bit. I'd like to think I'm quite adept at computers and learning and language learning models. I have been building some of my own AI things, and I've also won some awards in design. You'll probably notice that the economy is absolutely garbage dumpster fire right now, and part of it is AI, because a lot of companies are really investigating, what are we going to do, and how many humans can we fire. And I'll be honest, like, AI is not where it should be right now. There are some scary things in it. If you want to find out how bad it is, ask it for a word count. Ask it to give you 353 words and watch it struggle and then get angry at you. I've used it in many different ways, and I can see a lot of changes coming. Not only the amount of water that we use, and leading up to the end of the world, we're starting to see it in war. But futurism now, to me, is this differential that we're going to have as to the employability of humans and with AI. And I think we're at that sort of juncture right now, because it will lead to a lot of loneliness. But also, if you look at the fact that most of the internet is pornography, porn is probably going to lead the way first. I mean, look, everyone wants a sex robot, I would think. I don't know. I do not want a sex robot, but I'm sure it's going to happen. It's going to happen. And there's other things we have to worry about with technology that we have, I think, because we're so reliant on it. We've never had a crash. I mean, if you look at sunspots, all it takes is a big flash from the old golden orb in the sky there, and everything's gone. Everything's fried. If we were to lose, power or our technology for 2 months, I mean, you're looking at not an evacuation, an emptying of about 70% of the populations of major cities, mostly by death and disease. So something like that is terrifying to me, that this reliance, and it does make us more lonely, that this reliance on futurism, over-reliance will make us victims in the end, because you're not learning any realistic skills. I mean, it scares me to think that, obviously I grew up on a farm, and I know, if the power goes out, I got enough stuff, I'm going to last. I'm going to last for 2 months. Most people I don't think will, but I've been preparing for it. I'm prepared. I've got the tools. If you know what an EMP is, I always screw this up. An EMP, magnetic pulse. But basically, an EMP can be used, and you see a lot of these things being tested in Ukraine and Russia right now, is just boom, blow out everybody's power. Man, touch the rose-colored glasses again, Wade-Ep, because this is not so good. So what I'm saying is that part of being lonely is it's being able to embrace technology, but not over-relying on it, right? I was going to get into some rants and stuff like that. I'm not really sure, as I said, because I am just sort of building this first episode and trying to be it. I guess so. I will throw a throwback story, because I put throwback story as a title. There's a lot of titles that I have, and I don't think I'm going to make it to every one of them. So I'll get into how I started comedy. So I had been late 90s, 95. I finished at University of Western Ontario, and the plan was I was going to try to get into an LLB MBA, combined program, do an LLB and MBA at the same time. But at the same time, I'd always thought about doing comedy. I'd always thought I'd like to try stand-up comedy and see what happens, because, I'd watched it, and I thought, I'm going to try it. So I called the Yuck Yucks comedy clubs in Toronto and asked about amateur nights. They were like, it's on a Monday night, you come down, and we sign you up, and you call back at this number, and we'll sign you up. I was like, okay. Called my friend Greg, and I was like, look, I got him to see if he wanted to go, and I just wanted to have someone there, a little support, see what happens. And so I went down. It was new. It was totally terrifying for me to do comedy for the first time. I'd never, seen this, or I didn't even know what the hell I was going to do. And it was daunting when we first get in there. I was terrified because, I'm seeing all these people and all these other amateurs. They seem more professional than me. They were sitting around in circles and talking and schmoozing up to the MC. And so I did my set, which I thought would be a set, and was horrible. They had this guy named Jack Norman who would run part of the amateur nights, and he'd play videos, a videotape. Like, Jack would actually collect videos on videotapes and then have sequences to play after your set, after amateur comedy night. So mine was a child getting slapped, "You little brat." And I came off stage, and I think I got one laugh. Like, maybe I'm being nice to myself. I got the one big laugh. One big laugh, he says. I don't know if it was that big, but it was enough that I was like, oh, like, I don't know what heroin feels like in the arm, but it was probably like that. Yeah. And so I was like, I got to keep doing this. And my friend Greg was like, that wasn't that good, but you know what? Either was anyone. And so that was the decision I made. I was like, you know what? I'm gonna give this full time, because law school could always be there, and I knew I could rely on other things, but I knew I had to take a chance. And I knew if I didn't take a chance, I'd always regret it. And so I did. And so, again, my dad's like, okay, give it a year. And again, a year to the day, I won the Yuck Yucks Funniest New Comic in Canada. But I did it because when I finally committed to it, I put everything into it. And I wasn't going to half-ass it. And, I've half-assed a lot of things in life. But I'd like to think that having a bit of a work ethic is going to make you furtive and really push yourselves in doing it. So that's what really got me into it. And obviously it's difficult. It's different now getting into comedy. It's not the same. I don't go and do as many comedy shows just because the audiences are different, and that's fine. I can find different venues, but some of the venues that I do well at now are over 40s. Old people like it. There's more AI art there. I've just put up more art. I don't even know. Again, I'm going to edit this in post. So other stuff. Look, I'm a content creator. I'm going to keep rambling on here. I realize I'm almost done an hour of just talking about loneliness by myself. I love music. I'll put up my Spotify channel. It's DJ Wade here. Music, man, that's a good way to help bust out some loneliness. There's nothing greater sometimes than finding some jams and just dancing. Dancing is great. You should dance more. Dance like the whole world's watching. Or they're not watching. I can't remember how the quote goes. But just dance. You should dance. Some of the big music that I like. Look, anytime I hear the band Manchester Orchestra, they're a band from Florida, actually, either way. Kills me. Kills me. I'll put a link up to my Spotify playlist so you can go and check a lot of them. Matt Pond, PA. It's a group, collective group. Blows me away. Blows me away. So many, always putting out new stuff. It was like, who's the other band? Oh, man. I'm going to think about it now. I'm going to put up Not a Surf. Yeah, that's the one. I used to listen to them when I was in the 90s, and they continue to put out gold. Yard Act, again, a band from Leeds in England. Listen, I'll put on some of the playlists, but listen to music. Have some fun music. Listen to music. And, I was going to put out a fun story as well. And here's the one fun story I have here. I've just written down Billy Idol in Bangkok, which I don't know if you know the stories. I believe the year was, I think it was like 1989. And Billy Idol is in Bangkok. He's going through a divorce. He's been cheating on his wife. So his friend's like, let's go to Bangkok. And we'll chill out. We'll chill out for a few days. So the story as it goes is that Billy Idol, they were not drinking first. They were just going to hang out and trying to sober up in Thailand in the late 80s. And so I guess they discovered after a few beers that they were going to go, get some blow, some cocaine, some Charlie, as the kids call it, I guess. And they didn't get any. They got heroin. And so I guess rock stars, they do the heroin, and then they get the Valium, and they get all the other pills. What culminated was that Billy Idol had, through a 4-day bender that got so out of control that the Thai army had to come in and escort him out of the hotel. In fact, they had to inject him. He says they hit him with a dart gun, but facts afterwards was that the nurse shot him up just to shoot him down because he had trashed the hotel room. He admittedly was violent. He also said he had been weightlifting at that time, so he's incredible strength and had a lot of crazy energy. I think that would be a great movie, Billy Idol's 4-day bender. But to me, it's just little fun facts of stuff like that. I was going to keep rambling on. I think for a first episode on loneliness and just me going off about stuff, it's something I just wanted to talk about with everyone. So I guess, in a way, to end this podcast is I could end it funny way. Jim McElwain's comedian. Oh my eye! I just really butchered his joke. Just trying to even get to that. I hate it when the comedians do other jokes. You're like, and he does this. You're like, you're missing it all. Or when people do other people's jokes. Rose-colored glasses, Wade. All right. I guess my final thoughts, if I want to Jerry Springer this, is don't write personal checks. Sorry. That's how Jerry Springer got busted, writing personal checks to prostitutes. As you would. Personal checks were so good. I'll do another thing about that. So again, to close it out, be good. Be good to everyone. And I think part of loneliness and dealing with loneliness, it starts from finding that positivity in yourself, that glowing, because it feels like your light's going out. It feels like there's nothing, but you need to relight that flame yourself, and you need to get that fire going. I know, I've been there. I continue to go with it. I will continue to probably struggle with loneliness throughout my life. But doing this helps. Talking helps. And smiling, getting out there, working out. Working out makes me feel great. Cutting down on alcohol, cutting out drugs, Certain drugs, hey, I love them, but they're not going to help your mental health, and they're not going to help your physical health. And you need to clean yourself out, clean out the engines to be able to find that positivity view. Love you, really. Love you. Feel good about you. And put these rose-colored glasses on, because at some point and at some times, you really have to find something else to help you find the happy, to help you find the love. I hope I've helped you find the love. I hope I've helped you in some way with this, with your loneliness, reach out. Follow me on social media. You can reach out the Instagram. So many social media crap out there anymore. But I'm trying to get back into it, and I will be redoing this YouTube channel as well, so that people can watch and see this on YouTube. Because I know where that's a lot of it goes. I'm not putting it on the TikTok yet, because I'm calling it the TikTok. It shows how old I am. Everyone be good to each other, love each other, be nice to each other. I love you all.